afternoon, everyone, or good noon. My name is Yao Hill. I get my PhD from Second Language Studies at University of Hawaii at Manoa. Now I work as an assessment specialist here at the institution. I'm glad to have this chance to share how to do the PBLL, starting the end in mind, with the student learning outcomes defined first. All right, so by the end of this session, I hope that everybody would be able to list the steps of backward design, and you will be develop meaningful and measurable learning outcomes for your projects. So let's cover what is a backward design. A backward design the instructors think about what is worthy and requiring of learning. Very often, as any instructors, not the language instructors, we think about, oh, we have to cover all the chapters in the book, we have to cover all these topics and themes and so on and so forth. And now we're so excited with the project-based language learning, we start thinking about what project is possible and what project is challenging and exciting. But then, fundamentally, we really have to first think about what is that knowledge and skills we want our students to walk away after they complete this project, after they complete this course with me. So that is the first thing we have to think about. And then, what is the evidence of the learning? In project-based language learning, the culminating product in the end, which we hope that you will produce some sort of public product, like students will do a children's book, or they will do a public performance, or write letters to the Congress or some public audience. So that can be the evidence of learning by the very end. Then we also have to think about what promotes learning, interest, and excellence. And these are the scaffolding. What are the step-by-step activities that we can help students to, in the end, for them to successfully achieve that final product? So to summarize, in PBLL, we still want to apply the backward design principles that require us to think about what are the essential knowledge, skills, and values we want students to walk away after they complete the project. Think about that final public product you want students to present, and think about what are the scaffolding activities and learning opportunities that you want to give to the students. So 3 steps. So that is one outcome of this session. I hope after the session, you still remember these 3 steps. Okay. So now let's think about what does learning outcomes mean, and how to do a good job in developing a good student learning outcome. Student learning outcomes are action-oriented statements of the knowledge, skills, and/or dispositions that students are expected to know, to be able to do, or value upon successful course completion. In our case, can be upon successful project completion. Project can be short. Project can go across several semesters. But it's really about the knowledge, skills, and the values we want students to gain from this experience. So if we look at the components of SLO, it has 3 components. First, it always starts with students will be able to. Second, it has an action verb. So what exactly we want students to be able to do, and make these verbs operational, meaning that you can look at this verb and you can think about what activities they will be able to do already. So list, look at this word, list, describe, analyze, compare, hypothesize. These are operationalizable. So you can, if you ask the students to hypothesize, then you give them a task to see whether they can do so. I have more verbs, and you can access them through this link. And I will make this PowerPoint available to you after the session. The third component is the learning domain. The learning domain can have a content domain and a language domain. Let me give you an example. So for example, this one. Students will be able to describe important cultural elements and writing style in children's books of the target culture using short phrases or sentences. Probably you already gave them some basic vocabularies that students will be able to use. So the describe is the action verb, and the red part is the content domain, and the purple part is the language domain. Then everybody should are asked to write your SLOs on your blueprints, so you can see their content knowledge and the language knowledge. So if you look at them separately, you can see the content knowledge and skills. We can say describe important cultural elements and writing styles. And then in terms of language, students are able to use phrases and sentences. Okay. Another example. So first, SLO start with students will be able to, and then the action verb compare and contrast, and then the content domain is in red. Similarities and differences in common cultural values portrayed in children's books of one's own culture and the target culture. That's the content, and the language, using short sentences and formulaic expressions with high-frequency vocabulary. And on your blueprints, you can separate the content and the language. Okay, so how to make your SLOs measurable? As I said, we need to use action verbs, and it's best to use the operationalizable action verbs. Operationalizable action verbs, it just means you look at the verb, you know exactly the task the students need to perform to give you that evidence of learning. And language and culture are so related, so you look at these verbs, but there are other things that's more related to values. For example, suspend judgment can be a value-oriented outcome of action verbs, able to question assumptions, question other people's, or show inquisitiveness by questioning. So I have the word question here. So these verbs can both ask students to demonstrate skills. They can also be related to values. So don't think that it's just for the skills. So how to make our SLOs meaningful? We have to think about what kind of real-life tasks that students can perform that meet the features of project-based language learning. So it has to be significantly in context, and your problem needs to be challenging, and you encourage students to utilize success skills and help students to perform in-depth inquiry and sustained inquiry, and in the end, they have something that they can show in the public. I'll give you an example. This is the Hawaiian Airlines Internship Program for Chinese language learners. This is my colleague Song Jiang here at UH Manoa project, so adapted with his permission. So the Professor Song has this project where the students perform as an internship at the Hawaiian Airlines in the Hawaii International Airport. And they do these different things, telling the Chinese travelers about the rules and regulations. So if we look at this task at the first sight, these are the salient things that interns have to do: translate, explain, notify, inquire, answer questions. But if you think deeper into the environment that students immerse themselves in, you can see students interact with multiple domains and multiple audiences. So first, with self, maybe now they're positioning themselves in this role, they may have a deeper understanding of the benefit of being bilingual and the benefit of themselves performing in this professional setting. They interact with customers. That means they have to have both linguistic and cultural skills. And in terms of the industry, they need to know about the content and the career-related abilities, problem solving. And also, they interact with supervisor and coworker. And in this particular environment, they also have to know about the culture in the workplace. So you can see they're interacting with different facets in this role as an intern. So this helps us to think about what are the skills we want students to gain out of this experience. One example is critical thinking. So students should be able to examine business situations and apply industry rules and regulations to provide professional problem-solving solutions. This is beyond the language. This is the content part, right? But then what other language can support students in this role? Then these are the right-hand side are the language requirements. So students should be able to ask questions, explain policies, procedures, alternative solutions, clarify ambiguities, propose solutions. Not only that, they have to be socially appropriate, polite, and use professional language. So think about these tasks, think about the facets that students have to interface, and then we can think more about how to make our SLOs meaningful. So that so students can take something beyond the project to apply in real life. The next factor to think about how to make your SLO meaningful is to think about how to make your SLOs appropriate for learners' cognitive and linguistic development. So let's look at this tool list. Give you 1 minute. And you can tell me which side is more simple, which side requires more deeper cognitive ability. Okay, so I hope the answer is the left side. We can see these are the relatively simple tasks, and on the right side, those are relatively more cognitively advanced tasks. Even with children at elementary school, it's possible for them to perform relatively complex tasks if you give them enough scaffolding. If you give them the language, if you give them the examples, if you ask them to look at each other's work and provide feedback, they will be able to perform cognitively complex tasks. Then the third concern is to align our outcomes with national standards and established evaluation criteria. For folks in higher education, you probably also want to align your student learning outcomes with your program outcomes and institutional outcomes. So let's take a look at what are the standards. First of all, in terms of for language educators, first and foremost, we want to align our outcomes with the ACTFL World Readiness Standard. And they just published this book, World Readiness Standard, I think this year, that we can take a look, you guys can take a look. It has standards in different languages. And you may already be very familiar with these 5 standards in terms of communication, culture, connections, comparisons, and communities. One thing that I want to point out is that even though culture is listed only as one standard, but culture is actually infused in all the others. For example, culture, you can see culture comparison is here, and when they talk about communities, it's really community, including community culture as well. So connections, even though the connection is more about connecting with other disciplines, but the culture is there as well. So this is very interesting. So that's why, as language educators, I think culture is very important to us. And that's why I think 2016 summer PBLL Summer Institute is focusing on the interculturality in language, the PBLL. So let's look at one of the examples in that previous, the airplane internship project that I talked about. So they have an outcome that says students will investigate and reflect on cross-cultural differences and possible conflicts as a result of such differences. So you can see this outcome is aligned with the cultures, standard, and comparisons. There are other standards out there. For example, the Actful Proficiency Guidelines. There are Interagency Language Roundtable. There's also 21st Century Skills and Actful and 21st Century Skills partnership. They come up with 21st Century Skills map. So between the language standards and the 21st Century Skills. So those are very good resources to take a look when we come up with our student learning outcomes. I'll give you another example. So in the internship project, one outcome is for students to ask questions, explain policies, procedures, alternative solutions. This is what we just saw just now. This is aligned with the 21st century skills in terms of information media technology skills, specifically related to education and critical thinking and problem solving. For the folks in K-12, you probably really want to take a look at the core standards. For the folks in higher education, very good resources is value rubric. Value stands for Valid Assessment of Learning in Undergraduate Education, and this is a set of rubrics developed by hundreds of educators across hundreds of institutions in the United States. And if you look at their website, they have 16 rubrics. Many are aligned with success skills. And I want to emphasize this intercultural knowledge and competence. This particular rubric probably is very important for us, in addition to critical thinking. So let's take a look. So in the intercultural knowledge and the competence rubric, they have one openness, they call it openness attitude. In there, their criteria is that students should be able to initiate and develop interactions with culturally different others, suspend judgment in valuing his or her interactions with culturally different others. So I think in terms of the teaching students the intercultural sensitivity and competence, this suspend judgment is a very important outcome for our students to acquire, because the last thing that we want to do is for our students to form cultural stereotypes. So this is a very important outcome. With that, let me give a summary of the talk. So first I talked about backward design. Backward design should start with the outcome, and then thinking about what outcomes should students achieve, then we design that assignment tasks. In PBLL, that would be that in the end, the public product students should present. Then we think about what are the scaffolding learning opportunities we can provide to students, and the formative assessments can occur during this process as well. To make our student learning outcomes good outcomes, we need to make sure that it's measurable. Using action verbs, operationalized action verbs is the best way to make your SLOs measurable. To make it meaningful, we have to think about real-world tasks students have to perform beyond the project, think about their learner development stages, and think about the established standards and criteria. And that's all for my talk.